Welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast, dedicated to parents and anyone else who loves someone in active addiction. Education is a powerful tool in breaking down stigma, fostering understanding, and ultimately helping individuals and their loved ones navigate the challenges of addiction. With Donna Marston, author of Peeling the Onion and Sharing Without Shame. So take a deep breath and grab some tissues as we uncover the stories of love, courage, and unwavering support in the face of adversity, as Donna and her guests share their stories without shame. Because when we share our stories without shame, we inspire others to do the same.
Hello, and welcome to the Sharing Without Shame podcast. I'm your host, Donna Marston, and today's podcast is sponsored by Snap Bands. If you're feeling overwhelmed by negative thoughts, Snap Bands offer stylish bracelets that combat negativity while embracing inner peace. With a simple snap, shift your focus and take control of your mindset. Today, let's snap out the stigma that surrounds anxiety, addiction, and any other mental health issue, one snap at a time. To order your Snap Bands, visit Snap Bands, that's capital S-N-A-P-P, capital B-A-N-D-Z.com, and enter the code SWOS or Sharing Without Shame under comments. So today, I would like to introduce you to James, I hope I say this right, Kachnoskie?
Kachnoskie, yeah, it's a tough one.
Yeah, sorry if I butchered it. Who was born and raised in the rough and tumble coal region of Shemokin, Pennsylvania. James overcame significant obstacles in his life that repeatedly threatened to stop him from becoming the person he is today. So thank you for coming on Share Without Shame today, James.
Well, I appreciate you having me on. Love the chance to be able to share my story and hopefully help some people.
And all the way from England.
Yes, I am in the United Kingdom right now.
Yeah. So first question I always ask, what would you like to share with the listeners without shame?
So I battled an 11-year addiction to alcohol, and I'd just like to share that story with you and your listeners, and yeah, just be open and honest about it because I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. So could you walk us through your journey and with your addiction and maybe a little bit how it started? I don't like to stay too much into the whys. I love sharing the pathways to recovery, right? Everybody's why it can be a little different, but the drama and the chaos often is similar. But so if you want to start a little bit about that, and then a lot about your pathway.
So what happened was I was 21. I had a best friend. We spent time. It was best like we were best friends. We went everywhere together. We worked together. We were like brothers. And he suddenly passed away in this tragic accidental drowning. He was suffering from some seizure-related disorders that the doctors couldn't figure out, and they basically thought that he had a seizure and hit his head and fell into slid into the bathtub that he was running a bath, and he drowned. I was going to pick him up that day, so I called, and I was the reason that his brother found him. And then I went to the house and saw him, and everything after that kind of just went a bit crazy. It was a lot to process as a 21-year-old. I couldn't really wrap my head around it to deal with a death like that. He was only 20, so it was like, yeah, it was a real big like shell shock. Like, how do I deal with this? So I couldn't really cope. I didn't have any coping skills. I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody because I didn't feel like anybody understood the pain I was in.
Mm-hmm.
So I started drinking, and in getting sober, I kind of now know that like I'm not the kind of person who could just have one drink. I had to go like to the extreme. So when I started drinking, that was it. It just spiraled out of control. It was to like numb the pain,
Yeah.
but then it just swallowed me up, like completely took over my life. I lost jobs. I got into fights. I got arrested for fighting and DUIs. And, you know, I did that for most of my 20s and right up into my early 30s, you know. It was a tough way to live because I just, I felt at one point, at some points, I just felt like hopeless, helpless.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like I didn't care about anything or anyone. I didn't care about myself because I kept repeating the cycle, you know.
Yeah.
I hurt my mom and my dad and my brother, because they just wanted to help me and they wanted to see me do well, and I just couldn't seem to get a grip on my life. No matter what happened in it, I'd always blame something else
Mm-hmm.
for it. It was never the drinking. It was always was because this happened or I lost my job because of this. It never, it was always push it off on something else. Push it off on something else. Blame
Mm-hmm.
it on something else. So I never took responsibility. I never took ownership of any of it.
Mm-hmm.
And I let it drive me into the ground. I let it to, ruin so many things in my life.
And that's not uncommon. That's
No.
very common behavior that not
Yeah.
taking responsibility and it's everybody else's, it's people, places, and things that cause the problem.
Yeah. It became one of those things where if something happened that was bad, I had to drink because it was, all this bullshit that happened. Oh, I'm just gonna drink, you
Mm-hmm.
know. But the reason that bad thing had happened is because I drank, So
Yeah.
it just kept piling it on top of itself, and it just became this thing that, everything that was happening was because of drinking,
Yeah.
and I couldn't see that. When you're in it, you can't really look outside of it. You don't really have any self-awareness or vision. You can't see past what's going on, right here.
The
And plus,
self-centeredness.
you're just the only thing in the world that matters, and getting your next drink or figuring out how you're going to get drunk on the weekend or whatever. That's the only priority. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I used to borrow money from my mom, and I'd tell her it was for food and like to pay my cell phone bill. Because I could get money off her because if I told her that I couldn't afford to pay my cell phone bill, she'd give me money because she didn't want to not be able to contact me.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling.
So she'd give me the money.
Yeah.
So I'd always ask for more than what the cell phone bill was for, so I had extra,
Mm-hmm.
so I could buy bottles of liquor,
Yeah.
you know? So it's
Yeah.
one of those things. I manipulated that situation. And at the time I didn't see it that way. But obviously now, being 12 years sober, I look back on it and think like that was really, terrible thing to do to your mom. If she said that she couldn't do it, I just be like, oh, well, then I guess my phone will just get shut off, and then I don't know how you get a hold of me. That's the game you play
Yeah.
because you're in that deep. You've now committed that much. You're just that person. And
And
that
it's an
wasn't.
unconscious, I think it's an unconscious manipulation of usually the unhealthy helper, which is I was the
Yeah,
unhealthy helper, the mom, right?
yeah,
And you tug at our heartstrings because
hmm
that's how you get us.
yeah, exactly. But as the person who's struggling, you don't see it that way.
No.
You don't see that side of it. After the fact, I felt really bad for all the stuff I had done because, my mind wasn't clear. I didn't have a lot of sober moments.
Hmm.
And you don't usually get sober long enough that you get like this big woof of clarity until you get into recovery. And then, like, a couple months into it, like everything starts to open up and you start to like look at your life a lot differently, and you look at the past behaviors and the things you did and the way you did them and the way you handled things differently. You know, you
Yeah.
see it so much clearer.
So what was your pathway to recovery?
So it'd gone on for a long time, like it was 11 years. And basically what happened was I was in my hometown for a lot of it, and then I moved away from my hometown to somewhere else. like it was nearby. It was maybe like a 35-minute drive away from where I grew up. Just another little coal mining town. I moved there, and I still obviously I was still drinking, but I was in a better situation. I was in a really dangerous place when I was in my hometown because I was surrounding myself with people who were doing like the same stuff
Mm-hmm.
and just as bad as I was.
Mm-hmm.
So it was really hard to like not end up in jail. Like I was gonna end up in jail. So I moved away so I could kind of like I had a job and I was kind of trying to get myself together, but it was tough. It was tough going. Like I couldn't commit to it. And then every time I did think that I could, I'd say it out loud to people and they'd just be like, "Nah, man, you just like to drink a little bit. Sometimes you go a little too far." And I don't blame my friends for that, but like I don't think anybody wanted to tell me the truth because they all knew how I got when I drank and I get violent or angry. And I think they didn't want to just tip me over the edge and have me snap out on them because they said, you know, they
Mm-hmm.
agreed with me or they were like, oh yeah, you do have a problem. Or, they had issues the same as me and they just weren't really wanting to say, oh yeah, maybe you do have a drinking problem because then they in turn would have a drinking problem as well. So
Yeah, they'd have to look at themselves in there, how they
right.
drink.
Yeah, and I think that's hard for people to do. So, yeah, I battled with it for a long time. And when I moved out of my hometown, it got better. And then I got myself in a situation where I had a full-time job and I was working, but it was like every Thursday, Friday, Saturday, I'd go out on like a bender, right? And I do that for a while. And then I just got to this point where I was just so fed up with like all I ever did was just go out and like go on benders for like 3 days and then spend the whole day in bed on a Sunday recovering so I could make it to work on Monday,
Mm.
And I did that for months and months and months. And then I met a girl and she had a kid and I was around like this little 2-year-old. I was just like, oh wow, this is, I always wanted a family. I always wanted a family. I always wanted a wife and kids and all the whole thing. But obviously in the situation or the state I was in, that was not a possibility. That was not going to work. That was not going to happen. So I started seeing her and I was like, I just couldn't see how I could have that type of life and do the things I was doing. So I started to go and started to do like boxing and kickboxing and jujitsu
Mm-hmm.
because I thought I like to fight. I like to get into bar fights. If I'm really a tough guy, if I'm a guy who's really tough, if I'm a
Yeah.
guy who likes to do that, if I'm not just some drunk idiot, go and fight people who know how to fight. They'll fight you back. They'll
Yeah.
fight. So I did that, and it started giving me a lot of like discipline and knowledge about, just about myself, really. So I had like January, it was New Year's Eve. I had gone with my girlfriend at the time and a friend down to my buddy's house in Maryland. And we did this like every year. Like every year for like 4 years, we went down to Maryland. You pay I don't know, like a flat fee, like I don't know, $40 and you go and it was all you could eat, all you could drink all night at this like big like event. So we do that. So I went and I went off. I was drinking Long Island iced teas in the smallest cups you could possibly like the little like the little plastic cups you get,
Yeah. Yeah.
the little clear plastic cups. I
Yeah.
was drinking Long Island iced teas in those, and they were like when they were making them, they were like open pour, so they were just like dumping the. It was like all liquor and a splash of Coke, and I was drinking them by the handful.
Uh,
I was drinking them two, three, four at a time. Eventually, I just get to the point where I'm incoherent and out of it, and I think I tried to start a fight outside the venue, so they had to throw me in a car, and then I basically started spinning, and I got back to my buddy's house and threw up all over his bathroom, and it was a mess, and they drugged my body into a bedroom and just let me sleep. We were supposed to go out the next day and do something really fun, but I couldn't do that. So I went back home afterwards, which was a horrible 2 hour drive, by the way, because I was hungover and they had to keep pulling over so I could throw up out the car. In the beginning of January that year, 2012, we got back and I was just like, that was a mess. I don't know why I did that. So I was like, maybe I should stop. Maybe I should quit. I messed with the idea for a little bit and then I let it go and came back to it again. I was at her house and we put her son to bed and I drank a bottle of coconut rum on like a Wednesday night for
The
like
whole
no,
bottle?
yeah, like the whole fifth, like the
Like a
whole thing.
fifth?
Yeah, I drank a fifth with some pineapple juice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it was just like a casual like Wednesday night. Like we were just sat in and I drank them from like dinner time until like 8 o'clock. Finished the whole thing and I was like really, started like I felt really drunk and I was like, what am I doing? Like what am I doing? There's a little 2-year-old that looks up to me right now, and
Mm.
this is who I am. This is what this kid sees. And I don't know, it's just something clicked. Something like clicked inside my head. I can't really explain it, but I woke up the next day and I was like, I'm done. I,
Wow.
I I looked at her and I said, I'm done drinking. And she was like, okay, are you sure? And I said, yep, I'm done. I went home. I sorted myself out a little bit, and then yeah, I posted on Facebook for some reason. So every year Facebook reminds me. I posted it on Facebook that I'm done drinking. I quit drinking.
Wow.
And then I text messaged all my friends and was like, "Hey, I really hope you guys are going to support me on this, but I have a problem with alcohol, and I need you guys to like support this decision that I stop drinking." And then I just kind of like sat by my phone and was like, what are they gonna say? Is it gonna be like supportive? Like, am I gonna have to face some adversity like first day? Like, but they were all like, yeah, man, like maybe it's for the best. And I was like,
Wow.
could have said that shit to me like 4 years ago. That might have been helpful, you
Right.
know?
Right.
Right? But I mean, everything happens when it happens, and it happened at that time, and it happened for a reason. So yeah, so I ended up just yeah, I woke up and quit, and that was it. I was done. I quit drinking. Yeah, and then everything in my life just started to get better.
No
You know,
AA, no meetings,
no,
no therapy,
I mean,
IOP,
I've
nothing.
done I've done therapy a lot. I've like over the years I've done therapy like 2 or 3 times, for different things. Because I've lost my parents during this time. Like, through the years, I lost my mom and my dad, and
Mm.
so it's just a lot. Sometimes you need to. I mean, therapy's great. It's just it's very helpful. I think it helps you process a lot of the stuff that you just kind of like push down or build walls around or
Mm-hmm.
block out. But yeah, when I quit, I just quit, which is strange because I know a lot of people don't just like wake up one day and be like, I'm done.
Yeah.
But I was just at a point where like I just couldn't see how I could have the things I wanted out of life if I continued doing what I was doing. I was 31 years old. I didn't have a career. I didn't have any goals. I didn't have anything, you know, going, and yeah, once I quit, everything started to click and fall into place. I kind of threw myself into like working out and doing jujitsu and like doing that kind of stuff. Like the physical activity kept me focused and it kept me busy. I didn't have time to go and do anything else because I was running in the morning, training in the afternoon, doing jujitsu in the evening, and then I started to like get better jobs. And then when I got a job, I did really well at it. And then, it gave me the confidence to like want to have a career or want to have a career plan or because the fog starts going away. You start to have a clear idea of like what's happening in your life. And I got to make amends with my mom and my dad and my brother and kind of like rebuild all the stuff that I broke previously,
Yeah.
So that was a beautiful thing because I didn't know, but I only had 3 years sober with my mom after that. But I gave her 3 solid years of me sober, and that's like so grateful for that because I know that that's all she ever wanted, and she got to see me, accomplish these, things that she probably never thought I was going to be able to do because I was just throwing my life away.
Yeah. Yeah. It's real. It's very hard to watch your child, and there's nothing you can do. And
Yeah,
I learned the hard way that I couldn't love my son into recovery, that he
yeah,
had to figure out his journey and do his thing, and I had to figure out mine, and so how did you, as someone who's experienced addiction firsthand, what advice do you have for individuals who are currently sick and suffering? Or maybe they're
uh,
not sick and suffering, maybe they're just active in their addiction.
the only way you're gonna get sober is if you're doing it for you. If you're doing it for you
Hmm.
is the only way it sticks. You have to do it for you. You have to want it. You have to own it and admit it.
Hmm.
You have to admit some pretty big things to yourself. You have to admit that you have a problem. That like me, I had to admit that I don't drink like everybody else. I'm not a fun, let's have a couple beers and go home. You know, let's drink 42 beers and get into a fist fight. That's who I am.
Hmm.
And I have to accept that.
Hmm.
I have to hold my hands up and say, hey, that's me. That's who I am if I drink. I don't want to be that person.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, you have to do it for you. You have to want to do it. You have to want to do it. You have to want to make your life better. You have to want to get there.
So, how do you practice self care and maintain your own well being while you're supporting others through their recovery journey?
For me, my well-being, I like to be active. I like to run. I like to go to the gym. I like to listen to music. Those are things that I do. I like to spend time with my family. I have two little boys, you know, so I like to be around them and watch them grow up and spend as much time with them as possible because yeah, I'm lucky. I'm blessed now that I have the thing that I wanted. I got the family, I got the wife, I did what I wanted to do.
Is that the woman that you were dating in Pennsylvania? No,
No, that never worked. It fell apart. But it's one
when
of
you
those
got
things.
sober.
Yeah, well, no, I got sober and then yeah, things just didn't work out. And I just always feel like things happen for a reason, and that kind of like that showed me that if I wanted a family, if I wanted that life, I had to quit drinking. So it put me in that position to quit drinking. And then down the line, I think it was 2 or 3 years later, I met my wife,
Hmm.
you know? So I was sober for a year. I think I was sober for a year and a half when I met her. So I had a year and a half sober time. I was starting to figure out my life. Yeah, so I was starting to figure out things. And it was like, right time, right place, you know? And she's from the UK, so I mean, the chances of us meeting are crazy. Like it just wouldn't happen. But she did a summer camp in America, and I was a bouncer at a bar that they went to, and that's how I met her. And
Oh,
yeah,
and you
yeah.
moved to the UK.
Oh, yeah. I mean, yeah, kind of. But she lived in the States, but we had to do. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole. We meet. We talk all summer. She goes back to the UK. We Skype for a year on video chat, right? She comes back the following summer. We meet up and we date that whole summer. She goes back. We do a trip to New York City. She flies back for I think it was 2 weeks, and then she flew back over and she did a whole winter program, and then we got engaged. And then I came over here for Christmas, met her whole family, and then that April, yeah, the following April, then we got married. And then we started a visa process or the green card process.
With all this transitioning, how did your Addictively Speaking podcast come about?
So the podcast came about when I moved over here. And I moved over here in 2017. And I was part of like a big recovery group in my local area where I was from in Pennsylvania. So I did a lot of recovery work with my friend. I did like school speaking and like drug awareness days and like park cleanups and like just really good like community outreach stuff. And then I came over here and I didn't have anything. I didn't have anything. And my recovery kind of just got swallowed up by the move and a baby. And, it just kind of all got it just disappeared. So I thought like, I knew a guy in Pennsylvania and his name's Anthony Blackwell Jr. and he had a podcast and me and him were friends. So like, it got to the point where I was like, I need to do something. But obviously, fear comes into it. And then I'm like, oh, should I do this? Nobody's going to listen to it. You're silly. Don't do this. So I toyed with the idea for like 2 years. So like, yeah, right. When COVID hit and stuff like that, I thought about it for a long time. But then I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to buy equipment and this and that. So you just made myself excuses on reasons why I shouldn't do it. And then finally, I called my buddy, I messaged my buddy Anthony, and I was like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this podcast. What can you tell me about it? So he gave me all this information and really helped me out and really got me like started doing it. And then, I got some bits. I told my brother and he gave me a microphone and yeah, everybody just kind of really like encouraged me to do it. So then I just thought, yeah, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the podcast and I'll start it up and I'll share my story and I'll see what happens. And then, so yeah, so I started out doing the episodes like just based on like things that like, I go out for a run in the morning and I just think of like, what's a good topic to talk about? What's a good topic in recovery? Like, what are some things? Oh, what about triggers? Or what about, you know, finding balance or like finding recovery or what is recovery? And I just started doing and recording episodes like that. And now I have it way more set up. I mean, I'm a year and a half in, so I have it a little bit more organized. I've done a lot of interviews, letting people share their stories. Yeah. So I just started like, recording episodes and yeah, just been plugging away at it ever since, like trying to figure out how to make it better. You know, what can I do to get it more exposure and get it to more people? I mean, that's obviously why I'm doing other podcasts and things like that. Like I want to share my story, but I also want to share my podcast because my podcast can share other people's stories. It's like a big, thing for people. I can share it to other people all over. And the more people that hear it, the better. The more people it could help. So
Right. And there's so many people that are sick and suffering and their families, there's so many people impacted by, substances, whether it's
Mhm.
drugs or alcohol. And I mean, a lot of people don't consider alcohol a drug, but we know it is. So,
Yeah,
and
I did a podcast on the fact that like we we don't class alcohol the same way you class other drugs. You look down on a person who smokes weed, but the person who goes out and has like 4-day benders on alcohol, you don't look at the same way.
well,
You
it's
don't,
accepted.
but it shouldn't be.
Well,
I mean,
here's something interesting in the state of New Hampshire. When we
mm,
were going through COVID, the liquor stores were kept open,
of course, of
right?
course,
Because they were
yeah,
afraid that people would die if they couldn't have their alcohol.
yeah.
Which,
Or
I
people
mean,
would
that's a
get angry,
fact.
angry enough that they would go smash up a place and rob it because they needed booze. I mean, that's where we're at with. I mean, if you look at it, I did some Googling when I did the episode, and I just Googled some of the statistics, and it's like if you look at deaths, by drugs, it's like it's top two. I think it's one or two, heroin and alcohol,
Hmm.
like one and two.
Yeah,
Yep.
people
Yeah.
just don't see the seriousness of it. And it's interesting because years ago, so I ran family support for years, and one of the moms that I was working with, she was talking about her significant other would come over and he would have a highball. That's what they used to call it back in the day. When I was a kid, like my parents, the silent generation. And so she said the clattering of the ice cubes in his cocktail would bother her because her daughter suffered severely from alcoholism. It was
Mm.
amazing that this young woman made it, and just for today. And I said, "Oh, you don't drink?" And she goes, "Oh no, I have wine." And I said, "Well, wine's alcohol, right?" She goes, "It is." I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
It's people don't think they don't think of it like that. It's just wine. It's made with grapes, has a lot of sugar in it. It's
Yeah.
just the
It's
perception.
fermented and turned to alcohol. Yeah.
Right. But it's the perception, how people perceive things. And I always feel bad for people who suffer from alcoholism when they have to go to like a family gathering or any social gathering, because 99.9% of the time, most people there have a drink in front of them and here, have a drink. Why don't you drink? What do you mean you don't drink? I stopped drinking years ago. I don't have an SUD. I just did it because I do this work and I never want to,
Mhm.
embarrass myself, or, and
Yeah.
it's not important to me. And I've had people tell me they feel sorry for me because I don't drink.
Yeah.
And
But I
it's like,
mean,
wow, that I don't
yeah.
understand that thought process. Why would you feel sorry for someone who chooses not to drink? It's my choice. Now we have dry Januaries, right? So
Yeah.
people are going to go a month without drinking. And more people, I think, are starting to wake up to see that
Yeah.
they do have a problem. And
Yeah.
maybe dry January is a part of that interaction to get them to understand that maybe you do have a problem.
Yeah. And just think about how much better your January will be than the rest of your year, probably. The more clarity you'll have, the more focus you'll have, you'll have more time on your hands because you won't be hung over.
And more money in your pocket.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had those things too as well. And I've, obviously 12 years sober, I've done a lot of things. You know, my bachelor party, other people's bachelor parties, weddings, funerals, like you name it. Any activity that you could possibly do that involves alcohol, I've done it. I've also worked in the hospitality industry. So I work at places that serve alcohol. I'm around it.
Mhm.
You can't go anywhere without seeing it. Sometimes I do, like others, like this past year, I find it funny, like when I watch television programs too, because there was always a drink involved. If you ever watch like a drama or this or that, somebody's always having a drink. They're always having a beer or
Mhm.
and I just think to myself, like, huh, what? It's just so normal. It's just so normal. And sometimes I think to myself, like, why couldn't I just be more normal? Why couldn't I be the guy who had 3 beers and went home? I'm just not wired that way, you
Mhm.
know?
Yeah.
But I mean, it is what it is, you know? I have to accept who I am and, but, knowing who I am now, it saved me a lot of problems. I know I can never drink. I know that's not who I am.
Mhm.
I'm
Well,
not that person.
you know, I think in all awareness that people that I talk to who are in recovery often recognize the gifts, right? That were given because you changed the way that you look at your life. And I'm sure at one point you thought, how do I give this up? Because it means giving up my friends, and it's giving my social life, and I'm going to be alone. And how's that going to feel? What's it going to look like? But in the
Yeah.
end, you probably, I'm suspecting, because I know this happened for my son, your friends are truer. You
Yeah.
know who they are. They
Yeah.
have your back through no matter what, right? It's more authentic relationships. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I just think like I really like got to actually connect with my friends on a level that I probably hadn't connected with them on for years, you know? And they got to see a side of me that they hadn't seen in years. You know, we could go out places and do things, and they didn't have to worry that if I got too drunk, I was gonna get us kicked out of wherever we were at, or fist fight whoever was in front of me, or whatever, you know? And I did. I got to really experience like the friendships, and then I also got to meet new people and
Mm-hmm.
become really close with them. And they had never, you know, they didn't get to know the person I was before. They just knew who they got to meet now. Yeah, and I've developed like tremendous relationships. You know, I still talk to all my friends. You know, obviously it's a lot harder with the time difference and stuff, but we stay in touch, you know, via Facebook Messenger, video chats every now and again. Yeah, so it's just, you know, we've definitely connected on a different level than when I was using and drinking all the time. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I'm just a different person.
So what are any support systems that you have that you would recommend for somebody who wants to move forward that couldn't just stop like you did?
I mean, obviously, you know, there's the traditional route is always a 12-step fellowship. They provide a lot of support. You know, there's also like there's so many other things out there now. There's a lot of I met some great people over here in the UK, and they do recovery coaching. So you could look into recovery coaching and getting a recovery coach and somebody who can, you know, support you. And they come at it from a different, it's not the same as like a fellowship and like working steps and stuff like that. They're a lot different. They're really great people, and they you know their thing is like to meet you where you're at. You know,
Right.
they'll meet you where you're at in your recovery, and they'll work with you to help you. You know, they'll find you
Mm-hmm.
the services that you need. So it's the Recovery Coach Academy, but they're accredited, you know,
Yeah.
worldwide. They're doing big stuff over here.
And in the
But yeah,
States. I'm a
yeah,
I started off as a recovery coach and then I went for my CRSW. So I'm a
yeah.
certified recovery support worker. So I'm licensed now.
Yeah, so I think those are some great ways that you can, you know, because sometimes like a fellowship's just not for everybody. It works for a lot of people, but sometimes it's just not for everybody, and that's okay. You
Right.
know, and that's cool to say. Like we can say that.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's okay because everybody recovers different, so you can find the path
Exactly.
that works for you. And there are people out there who can facilitate, you know, these different pathways to recovery because your journey is unique to you. You
Mm-hmm.
do share experiences, and we've kind of gone through some of these same things, but your journey is going to be unique to you and how you want to recover.
Do you have recovery community centers in the UK?
No,
No, because that's big
their,
here.
their recovery stuff isn't, I don't know, I haven't really looked into it, but there's not a lot of, yeah, not a lot of stuff available for people to be in recovery. That's why meeting these people in the from the Recovery Coach Academy over here was really great because, you know, I did a couple classes with them and they're really on top of it and they're really pushing for, you know, recovery communities
Yeah.
and all that kind of stuff because it's super important. People in recovery need support, you know. They
Mhm.
need people around them and they need people that understand what they're going through, you know, the anxiety, the depression, the all of it, all the stuff, you know, we use,
Disconnection.
yeah, you use the substance to cope with a lot of things. And now you got to deal with real life, you know. That was one of the things for me. It was I had to figure out how to deal with real life. And all of that comes with it
How'd you do
without,
that?
I mean, you know, you just kind of get, but the more self-aware I got about like I just understood myself a lot better. A lot of self-understanding. I know why I get anxious. You know, can I help it all the time? No. Can I do better at like being prepared for it? Yes. You know, it's just things like that. Like you kind of know what are these things that, you know, they make you tick. They make you who you are. So you just kind of get to understand yourself a little bit better and to be able to cope with life. You know, I use running as like my main coping mechanism is to go out and run because I feel like it obviously it releases the dopamine in my brain and it gets me in more of a positive headspace. I'm a lot like my father. I'm a bit pessimistic at times Yeah, so I do feel like I need to have that running, and then I get in a more positive headspace, and then I can make, more positive decisions in my life.
Do you do journaling or meditating at all? Or is your
No,
running your meditation, your form of
yeah,
meditation?
my running is my escape. I just put my headphones on and like I said, music and running. If I can just go out and listen to some music for like 30 minutes and run 2 miles and just get my head clear, I feel so much better. So that's kind of like my big thing is that.
So, as we start to wrap up here, how do people get in touch with you to either be on your podcast or get you to be on their podcast?
So I'm on all the social media platforms. It's on Facebook, it's at addictively JK, and that's the same for Instagram. It's at addictively JK. And then I have a YouTube channel, which is it's Addictively Speaking podcast. And then if you want to get in touch with me, I'm on social media, James Kachnoskie. I'll probably be the only one that turns up, especially with my last name, you know. So you can get in touch with me, and I'm happy to be on other people's podcasts. I'm happy to have people or discuss having people on mine. So I'm on TikTok. I'm trying to figure all this out, the social media stuff. It's
It's a
it's
lot. It's a
it's
lot.
a lot. It's a lot easier, I think, for younger people. And now that I'm getting in my 40s, I don't feel as well equipped as I used to when
Yeah.
doing stuff like this. But yeah, I'm just trying to get the message out there and do the best I can to promote, my podcast and recovery and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being so open and honest and sharing your story. You never know who it's going to help, and I think it's
Absolutely.
really important not only for people who are in active addiction, but for one of the reasons I love doing this work is I just never want another parent to feel the way I did. And if your story or anybody else's can just provide them that hope so they can hang on just another day,
Yeah.
that's what it's all about, right? Because sometimes with you guys or with the parents, sometimes for me it used to be like a breath at a time, not just one day at a time. It was a breath at a time because that's all I could manage. And I'm
Yeah.
sure in your recovery you had moments in early recovery like that as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's the work that we're doing, I think, is important. I think it's inspiring hope for people who feel hopeless
Hmm.
and showing them that it is possible. Recovery is possible. Long-term recovery is possible.
Hmm.
You know, getting the things in your life that you don't think you can have, you can get them. You just have to get sober and figure it out. And it'll be hard. It'll be tough. There'll be things that test you. There'll be things that happen in your life that challenges. I lost my parents. I had to deal with that. I had to cope with all that stuff.
Yeah.
But you can do it. You can be strong enough. You just surround yourself with people who love you and support you, and you can get through it. And, always, if you need your recovery coaches or whatever, there'll be people out there that'll support you and get you through the tough times so that you
Hmm.
can, make it.
Yeah. Well, thank you, James. It was great to meet you, and I wish you the
Absolutely.
best in with your podcasting and with your young family. I have two boys, so enjoy those babies. They grow up way too fast,
I
and in the
really
blink of
do.
an eye, they'll be adults. So,
Yeah. I'm about to have a 6-year-old. He's on Saturday, he turns 6, and then I have a 1.5-year-old. So
wow,
they
they're
go quick.
fun,
Yeah, it goes
fun.
quick.
Well, enjoy.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in. If you'd like to support the Sharing Without Shame podcast, please subscribe, like, and leave a review. If you're in need of emotional support, Donna offers private sessions. For more information about Donna and the services she offers, visit www.sharingwithoutshame.com or email her at donna4support@comcast.net. Nothing in the Sharing Without Shame podcast is intended to establish a therapist-patient relationship or intended to replace the services of a trained therapist, doctor, or health professional, or substitute for professional mental health, medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. Until next time, may your faith and strength heal your heart.
That's true.